I'm having a terrible time deciding what to read for Nonfiction November, so I thought I would outsource my dirty work to you. Nonfiction November is, of course, a readathon run by Olive at a book Olive that she's been doing for several years. One of my first videos was actually a TBR for Nonfiction November. This readathon was one of the things that got me excited enough to actually start a channel, so of course I will always be thankful to Olive for that, as well as my first shout out ever, which really helped me stay motivated. I've been on a bit of a hiatus from BookTube for a while now. I'm definitely back in the groove now, so it feels a bit appropriate that doing a TBR for Nonfiction November would be one of the first videos that helped me get back into the groove. I love reading nonfiction, but up through the end of this summer, I was actually working on a master's degree, and so all of my reading was purely escapism. Only in the last month or so have I started reintroducing a significant amount of nonfiction into my literary diet. I've been loving it. Like, some of my favorite books I've read recently have all been nonfiction. So this has of course made me really excited for this readathon right now. So I'm just going to share all the books that I kind of am really excited to want to read right now with you, but I already know that my eyes are bigger than my stomach, my brain stomach for reading. And if any of these you have read and you would recommend, or if they just sound interesting to you and you really want me to read them for you and then give you the tea if they're worth your time or not, I'm willing to do that. No matter when you're watching this video, still share your thoughts with me. I'm going to be deciding what I'm reading as I go through the month of December, but also if I don't get to any of these books, and later on in the future, I am hoping to read all of them anyway, so comment away. As is typical for the readathon, Olive has given 4 words for prompts. I'm going to be honest, I did not use any of these words as prompts to choose the books that I'm going to share with you, but I do think that I could apply at least one of them to all of the books that I've chosen. Let's get started. Here are my literary prospects for Nonfiction November. The Silk Roads, A New History of the World by Peter Frankopan. Honestly, this book has been on my TBR since it first came out and I saw my brother reading it, but something that's made it really intriguing to me at the moment is because I recently finished reading Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World by Jack Weatherford, and I really liked this book. Like, I love the way that it talked about that sort of Central Asian and steppe territory and how crucial it was for making so much of the modern world. It is very long. It's 636 pages, so if I read this book, I think I would get it in audiobook form because that always feels like good value for your dollar. I also think it works for the prompts of industry style and collection. The transport of goods allowed for industry and collection of goods, and this amount of cultural transportation meant that there was sharing of a lot of cultural and artistic and architectural styles. Part of my education is in art history. I loved when we would be looking at some medieval or Renaissance piece of work and objects and it would be clearly foreign, like a painting of the Virgin Mary where the rug that her throne is on actually has like an Islamic prayer on it. This is like visual representation of the cultural exchange that happened because of the Silk Road, and I find that so interesting. Now that we're talking about art, I'll want to share with you 2 other books that I am very interested in because of my interest in art and art history, and this first one is Touched by Fire by Redfield Jamison. This book is about manic depressive illness and the artistic temperament, and I have long been very intrigued by the idea of the mad artist, the mentally ill artist, both as a real phenomenon as well as a projected identity. There is a lot of precedent of artists trying to present themselves as a bit more, sorry for the indelicacy, but crazy as a form of branding. There are also examples of artists refusing treatment because they think that it would hurt their art and that their mental illness is helpful to their art. So there's both a lot of toxic attitudes here, as well as it just being very interesting to challenge the source of this trope and dissect its legitimacy. Because of its examination of mental illness, I think this book would be a good fit for the prompt of treatment. Jamison is a professor of psychology at Johns Hopkins University, so I anticipate this being a bit more scientifically based than art historical, but the subject matter just interests me so much. So I'm very inclined to pick up this one. I am too excited about all of the books. Another art history option is Claude Monet by Julian Bearcroft. This was given to me by a friend several years ago, and I regret that I just haven't ever gotten around to reading it yet. There are a lot of images, so it's not just text. I anticipate this being more coffee table treatment rather than academic, but I've never read anything specifically going into depth on Claude Monet, so that might be a good place to start. Treatment and style are literally vocabulary used for formal analysis in art, and collection, I am assuming that we will get to know Claude Monet's collection of art. Since we're already kind of talking in the historical realm, which is one of my favorite topics for nonfiction, there are two other books I have to mention here. Who Cooked the Last Supper? A Woman's History of the World by Rosalind Miles. All that I know about this book is essentially summed up in the title, which is that it's an examination of how women have been overlooked in our historical records throughout history. Any media consumed that has been a feminist methodology reconsideration of history I've really liked, because it fills in a lot of the holes in history that we just thought we didn't know, and actually no one was just bothering to pay attention to that. Of course, this applies to so many minorities, but it also just rectifies this very obtuse conclusion that like women weren't doing anything, especially they weren't doing anything that like affects history and the way the world is today, and that is so simplistic. What women were doing certainly affected our modern day today, and not examining that in history is really naive. I think this book would be very interesting. Another option I'm very excited about also deals with the historical erasure of a minority group, which is The Essential Gay Mystics by Andrew Harvey. I believe this book is just an examination of gay history. I think it's a lot about historical figures that are already well known who were gay. I also hope that it examines like a historical evolution of gay culture within a social context, because I find it very interesting that historically speaking, some cultures had a lot of problems with homosexuality and others didn't have any problem with it, and understanding like the sources of that would be very interesting to me. I suspect that they are primarily religious, but there's always so much context when it comes to history. Doesn't this just sound really interesting? And the cover is it's a great cover. It's a great cover. Obviously, both Who Cooked the Last Supper and Gay Mystics both relate to the treatment of people and would work for that prompt word. But another book that would work well for treatment is Caste, The Origin of Our Discontentments by Isabel Wilkerson. And I don't know very much about this book, except that everyone who I've heard has read it, has loved it. I would anticipate that it would talk about the caste system in India, which is sort of the most well-known caste system that comes to mind for me, but I do know it also talks about Nazi Germany and Jews in the context of a caste system, as well as modern America, which I think would be so interesting because class awareness is something I think we are starting to talk about more in America, but not enough. I just noticed this book won the Pulitzer Prize, which I didn't know. It is really long. It might take up a bit of my time if I choose that one. I've heard mixed reviews on this one, so if you have an opinion, please share it. It might help me make a decision. It is Untamed by Glennon Doyle, which I've never heard the name Glennon before, but like Glennon Doyle is just like such a smooth, that just runs off your tongue. That's a nice name. I believe that this is not explicitly a memoir, but kind of like one woman's journey, as well as like sharing inspiration for self-fulfillment, self-empowerment. I've heard mixed reviews that have made me come to the conclusion that maybe this is a very liberating book for people who kind of need permission to have a bit more self-liberation and be like told to prioritize their needs. But for someone who doesn't really need that kind of permission, it's a bit self-indulgent and unnecessary. And with that, I'm not sure whether or not I would like this book or not. I can see myself going either way, and that makes me curious. I'm quite excited to read this next book, which is Homo Deus, A History of Tomorrow by Yuval Noah Harari. This is the sequel to Sapiens, which I read a few weeks ago. You've probably heard of it. It's been very popular. A short history of Homo sapiens, primarily a anthropological history. This book does the same thing, if I understand, but projecting into the future. You know, a hypothesis informed by all of this historical context that he has set out in the first novel. And I currently have Homo Deus, the audiobook, out from the library, so I think there's a good chance I'll be listening to this one this month. I'm gonna finish off this video with 3 nonfiction books that relate to talking about the internet, which is a subject matter I really love to study. The first is Uncanny Valley by Anna Weiner. This is a memoir about the author's experience as a mid-20s living in Silicon Valley. That enough is intriguing to me, and I don't know much more about it except that a lot of booktubers whose taste I really respect have really liked it, and that makes me very inclined to give it a try. This next one is Trick Mirrors Reflections on Self-Delusion by Gia Tolentino. This is an essay collection, I believe, about the internet and its social repercussions. I actually read the first few pages of this one and then I just wasn't quite in the mood for it. And the last book relating to the internet, as well as the final book for this video, I have saved for the end because I've already decided that I'm definitely going to be reading this book, and that is So You've Been Publicly Shamed by Jon Ronson. And I'm definitely reading this one because I've already started it. I kind of paused in reading it, but I was like halfway through. I do want to finish it. I also have a lot of thoughts on this topic, public social shaming on the internet and cancel culture, that kind of thing. My reservation with this book is primarily that it feels like it's already a little bit irrelevant, which is obviously the dilemma of any author trying to write about the internet, fiction or nonfiction. And this book, for example, was written in 2015, which predates the Me Too movement in 2017. And I think that event alone is so crucial to this conversation, if not actually change the conversation about the internet as a tool for public accountability. I can't tell if the author just hasn't gotten there yet, or if he's taking this in a different direction, or like I said, Me Too changed the conversation so much that he's not going to discuss public shaming as public accountability, which would tell me right off the bat that I disagree with some of the conclusions the author is coming to, but it's too premature to say that, and for that reason I do want to hear him out and see where this goes. But we'll have to see. I can tell you right now that these are too many books for me to read in 1 month, which is why I need your help, because apart from Homo Deus and So You've Been Publicly Shamed, I feel really impartial towards the rest. Like, I want to read them all, but I don't necessarily want to read one more than the other. So if you have any opinions, please go down to the comments, share them with me, tell me which of these sound most interesting to you, or if you have read some of them and tell me to save my time, don't bother, or definitely read it. I would love to know all of that. I think we're all done here. I need to go read. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!